Come for our miles of pristine beaches and vibrant art scenes. Stay for our diverse cultural experiences. Plan your trip now, Miami and MiamiBeach.com. On this season of the Leading with Audacious Confidence podcast, we share stories from corporate executives and tips from those who coach them to high performance on what it really takes to build and keep your confidence in this fast-paced, ever-changing world of business, and how they inspire others to lead with confidence. Be ready to take lots of notes because there's always some juicy nuggets coming your way. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Leading with Audacious Confidence. I'm your host, Alicia Couri, and my guest today is Miki Feldman-Simon. Let me share a little bit about Miki, and we're going to have this rich and incredible conversation. So Miki is a certified executive coach, CPC, with over 25 years of corporate experience in the United States, Israel, and Australia. She enjoys the fast-paced environment of startups and scale-ups where she has spent most of her career. Under her tenure in HR, marketing, and executive leadership, she has led multiple companies to successful exits and has gained deep understanding of the challenges executives face. She brings this expertise into coaching, where she partners with her clients to overcome the obstacles and challenges in leading and growing organizations. Miki has an MS in organizational behavior and a BA, a bachelor's in psychology and educational counseling. Her mission is to help people become their best selves, personally and professionally, and to help them live and lead with intention, authenticity, and integrity. She shares tried and tested tools to help people become the leaders that they aspire to be. And I'm so excited to have Miki on the podcast today. So welcome, Miki.
Thank you, Alicia. I'm so excited to be here with you here today. And yeah, it sounds like quite a mouthful about me. So thank you.
You're welcome. Listen, I only bring the best of the best, only the best. And so Miki and I kind of met on this women's speaker platform. So I'm so excited to get to know her. And when she talked so impassionately about the work she does around authenticity and integrity in leadership, I wanted to have her talk about that, because that's something that impacts your confidence when you're not leading authentically, right? When you're not being authentic, it does kind of impact your confidence in a negative way. Wouldn't you say so?
Oh, completely. I think when you're aligned, then you can come and talk and show up as your true self. And then you're really showing up with confidence because you're centered.
Yeah. Tell me what that looks like. Like when you start working with a client, what does it look like when they're misaligned or they're not showing up as their authentic selves?
Oh, let me think. Okay, great question. So I think it can show up in different ways when they're not showing up as their authentic selves. And for some people, it's what are they really standing up for? Okay. Mm-hmm. And what are their values? What is it that's really important to them? For a lot of them, and this is where I'm often brought in, is when their behaviors have not really aligned with what it is that they want, how it is they want to show up, right? And they're not really showing up as their best. And sometimes, not quite aware of how they're actually showing up.
Oh, that's a big one. Yeah. People are sometimes not even aware of how they're showing up to others. I know that one of the areas that I had to work on was people pleasing. Like when you're a leader, but you're still trying to lead from this place of making sure everyone is in agreement with you, or everyone likes you and likes the direction that you're going in. You're not actually being your authentic self if you're trying to please everybody, because you can't please everybody. So if you're showing up and you're trying to make smooth all the ruffles and make sure everybody's okay, something's not connected on the inside of you, because you're wanting that adulation. You're wanting people to like you instead of doing what's right for the organization, the business, the project, what moving forward. Even the team that you're on, you're not doing them favors by just capitulating or, like appeasing everything, right?
I think it shows up in a few other ways as well, that often with burnout, because when you're trying to please everybody, you usually struggle with saying no. So you're taking on more and more projects and more things that are not necessarily aligned with your priorities. And then we see the burnout. I've seen with some of my clients where it's really important for them that they're liked by everybody.
Yes.
They tend not to have difficult conversations. They avoid them, right? Because a difficult conversation, often the worries are, they're not going to like me if I tell them that. And I found that what really helps with that is, one, sort of diffusing this idea of a difficult conversation. And feedback is something that we often talk about and executives see as a difficult conversation. But if we think about it as we're taking away an opportunity from the other side to grow, because if it's a blind spot, if they don't know that other people think they talk too much, other people think they're rude, right? We're preventing them from growing.
Yeah.
So just flipping that over a little bit,
it's
right?
a mindset shift. Yes. We have to start helping them see, or at least facilitating the opportunity for them to see how their avoidance is actually hurting the issue instead of getting the result that they want. And so showing up with your authentic self is so important in leadership. So let me ask you this question then, Miss Miki. How did you come to this is what you really wanted to do? You wanted to coach leaders to show up authentically and in integrity. How did that come about for you?
Oh, great question. So I'm going to go way back to my undergrad degree, because I studied psychology and educational counseling. And in the last year of my degree, we had a practicum. And in that practicum, we worked with mentally ill people. And then I realized that I'm not going to be a therapist. It was too...
I love when that happens. And I'll tell you my own story in college, when I shifted, but go ahead.
So it was a bit overwhelming at some point, right? I'm in the last year of my degree, but I realized that I really took everybody's problems on me. It weighed on me. It was depressing. And also, I could not take responsibility for people's lives. So I shifted the same passion that I had for understanding, for helping people, into the business world. And I got my master's in organizational behavior. And through the years, most of my career was in HR. As you mentioned, I held other executive roles. But people would often come and ask for my advice, whether it's career or how to handle different situations. And I loved it. I thrived when I was helping other people. So at one point, I realized that coaching is exactly what I was looking for. It is working with healthy people, right? It's very forward-looking. It's very practical often, and I'm a practical person. Yeah. And I feel like I found my flow. I love what I'm doing.
You're making the difference you wanted to make, why you went to school in the first place, but it's on such a different level. Yeah.
Exactly.
When I was so I went to school for fashion. I wanted to be a fashion buyer. That was my dream. That was all I thought about. I wanted to be a fashion buyer. And
Alicia, the first thing I started to study was fashion as well. I said that right out of high school. It was like, I love fashion. I still love those things, but I realized it's not for me.
Yeah, I wasn't be a fashion buyer. And I was so excited about all the courses. And then I saw in the second year, we were going to do the fashion buying course. And I couldn't wait to start the fashion buying course. And then when I started the fashion buying course and I realized how much math was involved in fashion buying, I was out. Math and me were like sworn enemies at the time. We were like, I don't want to have to do mathematics anymore, equations and calculations and all of that. And I realized that the majority of fashion buying was mathematical equations. You were dealing with the numbers. Not, yes, you got to go to all the glamorous fashion shows and all the different things, but you have, at the end of the day, most of your day was spent crunching the numbers. And I knew I would be miserable doing that job. And I had to take a pivot. Right there in college, I had to pivot what I had dreamed of for like the last 7 years of my life and work towards. It's like, we got to change this. This is not going to happen. So I did fashion marketing. I did marketing from there.
So it's amazing how much we have in common. So the first thing I started to study was fashion design, and realized how much drawing was involved, and I wasn't too good at the drawing. I really loved it. I made my own clothes throughout high school. The next thing I started studying was actually business and economics. And I started studying calculus, and I took high-level math at school, but I was like, I hate this. This is not what I want to do in my life. So I shifted again and found the next thing, and the psychology was my thing.
Yeah.
And I use those tools.
I love brain science tools. I did not do the psychology degree, but I think I have an honorary degree in psychology. All the reading of psychology stuff I've done since.
Love that.
I love that, you've had the experience of finding who you are in your journey. And so as a coach now, helping leaders find that authenticity, it's like, really, who are you? What are you so passionate about? How can we incorporate this into your leadership so that you are leading from a place of, I love this and I'm showing up to work every day because this is really what I love to do. That's so important. And you're helping leaders find that and be able to lead from that place. Now, have you had any clients that you've worked with, and just like we had that experience where it's like, not for me, but you work with them and they realize, I'm in the wrong place. Has that ever happened to you?
It has. And I want to talk to you a little bit about framework of how I work with the clients, right?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I was going to get to that a little bit later, but you could talk about it now if you want to.
So I think that it's exactly what you were saying, though, because it starts with, let's go back to what's important to you. Mm-hmm. What are you passionate about, right? What are your values? What are your priorities? So really thinking is about, who do I want to be? Okay, so that's like the first part of the question, which you just stated now. And then you connect it like with the second part. Okay, what is that going to mean? So how do you put that into action? So what kind of behaviors, if you want to be a caring, empathetic leader, how are you going to show up? Like, what behaviors are going to mean that? If you want to be a better listener, what does that mean? Okay, so it's like, who do I want to be? Getting clarity on that, then getting clarity of how you're going to put it into action. And the third part is really this reality check of how are you showing up, okay? So in executive coaching, we often do this in a 360 interview. And I'm happy, if you want, I can give some tools for people of what they can do without this 360 interview, but you're identifying the gaps here, okay? And the gaps are, the gaps are, okay, my intention is to be caring, and I can give you here a great example from a client. She really cared about her employees, but her way of showing them that is when they had any kind of, whether it was a personal challenge, a family challenge, she would reach out and she'd be the first to say, what can I take off your plate? For her, that was showing that she cared. They interpreted it as all she cares about is work. They wanted her to actually ask, how are you doing? How are you coping? Right? So there was this gap of like, this is what I mean, This is
Yeah.
how, like
A
this
little
disconnect, right?
Mm.
And I think when you create this clarity of who do I want to be? How should I be behaving? How am I going to demonstrate that? And then this really self-reflection and self-awareness of how am I showing up. That's when people sometimes also have this aha moment that you asked about, like, you know what, I'm really not in the right place.
Yeah, right.
Because,
Yeah.
right? Because it's creating clarity around all these things.
And
And sometimes
awareness.
it's like, yeah,
Because
yeah,
there's so much, and yeah, you studied this, but there's so much happening in the subconscious mind that our conscious mind isn't picking up. And when we're unhappy, a lot of times we don't even know why or what it is. We're in such a treadmill of just going through the motions of everyday life and doing it, and until we stop ourselves and actually, or someone like a coach stops and asks us the question that allows our brain to slow down enough to access the subconscious and say, oh, it's because of this, this, and this. I never connected it. And you said a really important thing about how that gap and that disconnect can happen so easily, because the way we are presenting something, we have total clarity in our mind what we're doing and why we're doing it, but we never
always.
stop. Oh, well, when I say total clarity, is like the intention of like how your client that you talked about, how she was showing up, she had total clarity, and I'm doing this to help them without ever asking the question, even to herself, is this helping them? Or how is this being perceived by them?
Right.
Ask them, how can I help you? And I spoke with someone who does grief counseling, and because I was saying I never know how to approach someone who is grieving. I'm like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to say. And said, you know what? Ask them what they need. So many times we come with our own idea of what they need or how they need help, or they try to help without asking them what.
Right.
And a lot of times, don't just ask, what can I do for you? It's like, what do you need in this moment now that I can help you with? What do you think you need? If you just need peace and quiet, let me get everybody out of the room. I could do that. Find out what it is they need to help. And then that would help you understand, how do I need to show up for them to be the person I want to be? So that's so, so vital. Can you just outline the
Alicia?
steps again? Yeah.
I will in a moment. Can I comment on the few things that you said? So one, I think that you talked about a very important thing of understanding that not everybody is like us. Mm-hmm. That if you're grieving or if you're going through something, you may want one thing, somebody else may want something else. So just coming in with this awareness of curiosity, mm-hmm. right? That there can be more than one answer. The other thing that when you talked about taking that pause, I think that's so important, to sort of that pause to reflect. And I'm going to go back to something you said earlier in the conversation about the people pleasing and people liking you. Mm-hmm. So that's when you took a pause, most likely, and you suddenly realized it's what Marshall Goldsmith calls like what got you here won't get you there. Mm-hmm. That maybe this people pleasing, it's worked for you. It got you to where you are now. Mm-hmm. But you need to make a change to get to the next step, or to be happy, to do things without having resentment and everything else. So that pause and understanding, like, okay, what brought me here is not necessarily what's going to get me there. That framework,
No, I said absolutely, absolutely.
So the 3 steps of the framework are, first of all, you're trying to work out, who do you want to be? Okay. So you're asking yourself questions about what are your values, and the your here is important because we are often, if we don't put thought into it, we're operating from our parents' values, mm-hmm. our partner's values, maybe our values from years ago, but things change. Your values maybe when you're Yeah, because when you're young at college, you may have different priorities and values. And when you're a young mother or older, your priorities, your values change. And another thing about your values, you can also try and think, okay, if this is the person I want to be, what values should I have? Right?
Mm-hmm.
So to understand that it's a process. It's something that it can be changing, and it's up to you. What kind of values? It's like really, who do you want to be? So that's the first part. Okay. The second part, I call it creating an action plan. So how are you going to show up as that person that you want to be? What kind of behaviors you're going to behave? So you want to empower your employees. What are you going to do? You want to be a present leader, manager, parent. What is that going to look like?
Mm-hmm.
The
Because I
third
think
part,
that's one of the biggest disconnects, is that we don't connect it to what does that actually practically look like in steps. What does that look like?
exactly.
Yeah.
It's exactly that, because I think sometimes we skip. And you know what? When things are all, everything's going really well, we're having a wonderful conversation, it's easy to behave in that intentional way.
Mm-hmm.
But when things start going wrong, when there's conflict, if we haven't really thought about how we're going to show up, you're likely not going to show up at your best.
Or at all,
So,
you're going to avoid. You're not going to
right, yeah,
you're going to run away.
I hear you. And so the third part is really creating that self-awareness and walking the talk, you can call it a reality check of how are you showing up. And here it's knowing more about what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses, what are your triggers, when do you show up as your best, when do you not? And you can think of look, it's a cycle, because if you get feedback that you're not showing up as your best, that you're not a good listener, you might want to go back and think of your values. Is listening part of your values? Maybe you don't care.
No, I don't care. Right.
But if you want to build better relationships, if you want to listen to people, then going back and sort of adding that as part of your values, then thinking how are you going to show up
And
as
getting
that
some
better
skills,
listener.
getting some skills training. Maybe you've never been taught how to be a listener. I've had so many people say, I'm a great listener. And then you get in a conversation with them and they didn't hear one thing you said. Like, have you heard me? Are you really listening? I don't know.
And, it's really interesting. I've seen in this framework with my clients, so one, an entrepreneur, a woman, her own business, she was torn between the time she was spending at work, feeling guilty she's not with her kids, and then when she was spending time with her kids, she was feeling guilty about not spending. I think a lot of us have been there. And then when we went back to her values and her priorities, everything became so clear that then setting up the schedule that worked with her values, it was simple. And we got rid of all these guilt feelings that were just kept on getting her stuck.
Yeah.
Nagging and getting her stuck.
Getting in your way. Wow. That's huge. It's
Yeah.
really big. There are a couple things now that I wanted to just reference what you were talking about, because first of all, when you're getting feedback, I love to follow the 4 agreements in thinking about how you get feedback, because, the second of the 4 agreements is don't take offense. Don't get offended. So many times people it says don't take things personally. So many times people take things personally so quickly and they get offended that they don't hear what's actually being shared with them. So I usually tell people, take it as data. Just look at it just as data. Don't let it get personal. Look at it as data, and then be able to evaluate the data that someone's sharing with you. So in taking feedback, there are ways that you can accept feedback without making it, getting offended or making it personal. And now we have a whole lot of other situations we have to unpack before you can even get back to how do we change that behavior. So feedback is really, really important, not just how to receive it, but how do you give feedback to others? You know, if you're that kind of leader that was the people pleaser, how do you learn to give these are all learnable skills. I think that's one thing that I want to highlight is a lot of these things are learnable skills that you can develop, and working with someone like Miki can help you develop those things. And then
can I add to that? Can I add about the feedback?
Yeah.
So I think the feedback is such an important tool for people to grow, right? It's the best way for us to identify our blind spots and where we're not showing up as our best. And I think from the giving perspective, I often talk to my clients as well. It's like you have to have a certain trust between the giver and the receiver. Because when you have that trust, like my job as an executive coach, I'm constantly giving people feedback that I gather, right? So how do you do it? Well, I create trust with the client that they know that I'm there for their development. Right. So if, as the giver, if you have this trust and you are coming not from blaming, right, not from like making a point and I'm right, but really from the place of helping people grow, then it's much easier for the other person to receive feedback. Yeah. And I think on the receiving side, I love the fact that you said take it as a data point, and often just say thank you, right? Just thank the other person. See it as a gift. Feedback is a gift. Evaluate it, right? See if it makes sense. Gather more feedback. Other people think the same way.
People, like, do you see this? Yeah. You're experiencing this? Yeah, absolutely. I did. So I did a workshop on personal branding recently. Well, that's part of some of the work that I do. And we talked about a couple of things that you mentioned, belief systems, but also how you're showing up. Because your brand is your reputation. It's who you are. It's who people believe that you are, or that they see that you are. And if there's that gap, like you mentioned, in people's perception of you and what you think you're projecting, then that's a problem, especially in leadership. You're not being authentic to your brand in the way people are receiving you. And you need to get that feedback. And if the people around you are not giving you that feedback, then you need someone with an objective eye, because we do have blind spots. We have these areas that we don't see for ourselves. And I think it's so important that you're able to get in there and help leaders really see those blind spots and address them in a very trusting, kind, and consistent way, with a lot of integrity. Because as your coach, you're not coming in there just to people please with them either. You're not coming in there just to tell them what they want to hear. You're here to affect change, because obviously something's not working. So when you say, what got me here won't get me there, that's what it's all about. So if you're someone who's looking to grow or get to the next level, you can't keep doing business as usual. It's not going to work that way. Right. It's not going to work that way.
And I love the brand.
Yeah.
I have to say, I love the brand part, because if you think about it, the first part of the framework I mentioned, like, who do you want to be? What's your brand?
What is your brand? What do you want to show up as?
How do you that's exactly the brand. So I love that.
And so every leader has a responsibility, I think, to build their own personal brand, to understand who they are as they step into leadership, and how people are going to receive them. Not just, I want to be, it's how are people actually going to receive you and receive your message. And that builds trust. When you build your brand, it builds. So you're in the brand building business, because you're building their brand for them. You're building trust with their direct reports and with the rest of the organization, helping them get to the next level.
And I wanted to, how you it's how you show up, right? Yeah. Because it's how you're showing up. How do people see you? And that's what we're working on. And how do you want people to see you is a big part of it, because that's
It's
like you're
perfect.
designing your brand. And
You're
then like, are you
designing.
showing up as your brand?
It's exactly right. Because as you're talking, I'm like, she's building brands. She's building their personal brand as a leader. That's exactly what you're doing as you're coaching them through this process. And what we were talking about earlier about belief systems, I love this quote by Leland Van Vanderwall. I'm going to read it here because I don't want to butcher it, but it says, our belief system is based upon our evaluation of something. And frequently, if we reevaluate it, our belief about it will change. A lot of times we don't reevaluate. So you were saying a lot of our values and beliefs come from our parents or our environment, the people that we grew up around, our teachers, our aunts, uncles, whoever the authority was in our lives growing up, grandparents. We adopt their belief systems. But if we don't take the time to actually question or evaluate, is this really true for me now?
It's so right, Alicia. You know, it's like, it's challenging assumptions. And I was doing a workshop exactly on this. And one of the women said that she grew up and the value in her house was, you have to be nice. The most important thing was to be nice.
Mm-hmm.
And that impacted her and wanting to be liked by people, right? It created this persona, this value in her life. And when she sat down and she thought for herself, what's important to me?
Mm-hmm.
That was not necessarily the right thing and the right way she wanted to show up always.
That is so powerful, because in that too, a lot of times we don't realize that some of the values that we're holding onto so tightly are actually holding us back. We're not evaluating whether or not this value is actually a hindrance to me now. So being nice, growing up with this value of being nice, you reach a point in your life, especially as a leader, where you're not always going to be nice. And then how you're talking about authenticity, how does that creates what? A double binding message. It creates friction. It creates pain, actual mental pain, because it's like, how do I do this thing? Like if you have to fire somebody, how do I fire this person for the good of the organization and be nice? They're at conflict with each other. So now you have all this internal conflict and your stomach's churning and you're avoiding it and all these things are happening. And
it gets worse and worse.
Worse and worse and worse. And it's all because of that one value data point again, that one value that you had that you never questioned or even were aware of in your belief system, in that subconscious belief system, unless someone pulls it out of you in a conversation or in a workshop or in doing some kind of activity to help you connect those two. So those things can be gaps that you're not seeing in your own development in your career.
So one question that I like to ask people for this specific thing is like, what kind of sayings did you hear at home when you grew up? And that really takes you like the be nice, so some people it's like, don't cry over spilled milk, or and what does that mean, right? How has that affected you?
If you don't have anything good to say, don't say anything.
Oh yes. Yes.
So instead of getting into the conversation, you avoid it because I don't have anything nice to say. But what does nice mean? What does nice mean to you?
Yeah, what does nice mean? And is giving somebody constructive feedback, is that being nice?
Is that not being nice? Exactly. Is that not being nice? So now you're like in this loop of, well, I don't have anything, glowing or happy to say. It's all negative. Oh, what do I do? I'm not going to say anything. Well, then that's holding you back. So I love all the exercises that you do to help pull, because unless we have awareness around it, we can't do anything about it.
So can I give a couple of questions people can ask?
Yes, please.
So if you want to get feedback from people, So don't just wait for them to give it to you. You can ask a couple of simple questions. So the first one is, how can I be a better, and then you can fill in the blank. How can I be a better partner?
Mm-hmm.
How can I be a better leader? How can I be a better manager? How can I be a better parent? Okay, so that's the first one. The second one is, what can I do more of? What can I do less of? And you could ask that of your employees, your manager, all the people around you. That question will really help you understand things you need to grow at, and the things that we mentioned for, like, you need to stop doing. Because a lot of it is new behaviors you need to gain, right? And behaviors that you need to get rid of. So just simple questions that you can make it a habit. How can I be a better partner leader? What can I do more of? What can I do less of?
That is powerful and so simple. It's profound and simple. And the most profound things are simple. It's the simplicity of it. And so as a leader, if you adopt that as a way of doing your job with your team and how you interact with people, that's showing up powerfully, because it's also showing vulnerability. It's showing integrity. It's showing that you care, that I'm here for you. It's showing so many areas of building trust in leadership just by asking those simple questions. I love it, love it, love it. So
it creates an organizational culture that supports these things, right?
Yeah, I love it. Okay, Miki. So, sorry. This has been so great, such a great conversation. I want to jump into the rapid fire, because we're running out of time. But before I do that, is there anything else that you wanted to share that we did talk about the framework? Is there anything else that I didn't ask you that you wanted to share?
Oh, I think we talked about so many important things, Alicia. Okay. You had great questions. I think we're good.
Awesome. So, all right, strap on. This is not difficult. My first question is, think back to a time when you were a leader. What was the biggest leadership mistake that you think you ever made or was a victim of?
Good question. The first thing that comes to mind is I was in an executive role and had been working with my team for a long time on getting a special grant. So the grant wasn't for a great amount of money, but it was a very prestigious grant. And just getting that grant would have been very helpful, very useful. And we worked for a long time on putting it together. It was with a partnership with another company, and we get the grant. So we're so excited. We get the grant, the press release goes out, everything. Then we hear back from the company that was giving out the grant that they changed their mind. That was my reaction. So they changed their mind. They went back and they looked at everything that we submitted. So we submitted everything, and they didn't like something in the structure with the relationship that we had with the other company. And after the months of the hard work and them saying that we got it, my mindset was like, it's your problem. You did this wrong, all on them.
You went into blaming.
I went into blame mode. I wrote a nasty email. Luckily, I decided to share it with my CEO before sending it out. And they were way more removed from the whole situation. And
take things personally.
Exactly. So and just the zooming out and being solution focused. So I definitely learned to take a good breath and to be solution focused, even in the situations where it's like, yes, they made a mistake, but how is that going to help me going forward?
Oh, that's excellent. Excellent. And good thing you got that advice and you had the presence of mind to ask somebody higher than you who wasn't removed from it. Because we do take things personally. It's like, I did all this work and what did they do? They just shut me down. You know? So I guess it may be different, but what is the best leadership advice that you ever got that you still implement today?
Listen. Be a good listener, ask good questions. And I think learn to shut up sometimes. And that's something as an Israeli and somebody who's quite direct, then I tend to say my mind and just to be more of a listener, ask questions, be curious.
Be curious, yes. So then this is a fun one. So if you were a castaway on a deserted island and you wish that only three things were airdropped to you or washed up ashore, what would those three things be? And one cannot be a cell phone.
Okay, the first thing I was going to say is my cell phone, of course, but if I can't have my cell phone,
you can't call for help.
Sorry?
You can't call for help.
I can't call for help. So I would want somebody to talk with. I'm a people person. So the first person of that would be probably my husband, my partner. So I would want somebody to be with.
Let me drag somebody else on this island with me. Why not?
Why not? Yeah, and I'd want my Kindle. If I can't, I want to be able to read. So the Kindle has endless possibilities for reading. Mm-hmm. And maybe some matches so I can have fire, warm up some food. So yeah, those three things would be good.
Awesome. Resourceful. If you were a song that's out there in the world, what would that song be, or a title that speaks to you, and why?
Title that speaks to me. Okay, that's a hard one. Look, the first thing that came to my mind was there's a song like "Oh Miki, You're So Fun," that came to my mind. Yeah, because that is a song
because it has your name in it.
It
How
has
many
my
songs have your name in it?
So that just came to mind. I like songs that are very
upbeat,
sort of
upbeat, that you can dance to.
Yeah, and that's what I run to. But I love like deep, meaningful songs and that talk to my soul. So I am not sure what the title of the song would be, but I think it would be a combination. It would have these parts that have high beat, and then it would have these like deep, meaningful words that I could connect to.
Nice. And okay, what are you reading now? Or you can give me the top three books, your top three favorite books of all time.
Top three favorite. Well, I mentioned What Got You Here Won't Get You There by Marshall Goldsmith. I think that's a book I would recommend for any executive, and anything that Marshall's written, I think is wonderful. That's one of my favorites. The other one is The Growth Mindset by Carol Dweck.
Oh, Dr. Carol, I love that.
Yes, I think that is a must-read book for parents, for professionals. How do we embrace challenges? And the third book, I recently read Lessons in Chemistry. And I love that book. It's about a woman scientist in the US in the 1950s. And it is witty, it is funny. I learned so much about what life for women in the science field was like there. I love it. Really recommend that one.
Awesome. Do you remember that? Well, you can always message me the author and I'll get that in there. Thank you so much. This has been a great conversation. I've enjoyed it immensely. Thank you, Miki, for sharing. And if anyone wants to get a hold of you or get in touch with you, who do you work with? Where do you work? And how can they get in touch with you?
Okay. So the best way to get in touch with me is either LinkedIn. So Miki, M-I-K-I, then it's Feldman-Simon, and that's my LinkedIn.